Welcome to the Money to the Masses podcast, putting you in control of your finances. It's a good thing podcasts are free, as this one isn't worth a penny. Here are your hosts, Damien Fahy and Andy Leeks.
Now, Damien, before we get on with this week's podcast, you had something quickly to say about our sponsors.
Yeah, we've got a new sponsor, Money Farm, and Money Farm are an online investment advisor and one of the biggest digital wealth management companies in Europe. So a big thank you to them for sponsoring the podcast. Now, Money Farm create portfolios to maximise long-term returns using ETFs to make incredibly cheap portfolios. And you even get the first £10,000 of your portfolio invested without any charge from Money Farm. And if you enter the code MTTM20K into the box when you sign up, you get the first £20,000 of your portfolio invested and run by moneyfarm.com without any charge.
Great stuff. On with this week's show. Hello and welcome to episode 119 of the Money to the Masses podcast with your resident expert, as always, Damien Fahy, and me, Andy Leeks. Damien, welcome back on this sunny afternoon.
It's amazingly sunny for, what are we now? We're in February? Of course we're in February. So yeah, it's quite uplifting. And actually even more uplifting because I just worked out an amazing, well, it's an anniversary in fact for Money to the Masses, because if you're listening to this podcast, it is exactly 7 years to the day when I started Money to the Masses.
Wow.
So 7 years ago I was sat, if you've heard this story then bear with me, but 7 years ago today I was sat in a coffee shop in the city next to the stock exchange, and I was wondering what to do. My daughter had just been born. I'd come back from paternity leave. I was doing a job which I enjoyed, but I was basically making rich people richer. I couldn't afford my own hourly rate, and I just felt it was a fairly soulless job. So I started to give away what I do online for free, writing a blog, essentially at first. No one read it. And then it snowballed. After 4 years, I worked on it full time, and here we are today, 7 years on, and with around 1.5 million people a year come and find us organically, which means I don't do marketing. So yeah, we've come a long way, and it's amazing to we're doing podcasts and everything, Andy. So it's one of those moments that creeps up on you, but you sit back and you think, wow, we've come a long way.
Happy anniversary to you. What is it for 7 years? Normally they have like paper or china or wood. I'm sure it's something. We'll find out. I
should have looked it up. But yeah, it's brilliant because this all happens so fast. You're always doing the next thing, the next project, trying to push things forward. And I would say to anybody out there who is trying to do something, that occasionally it's good to sit back and actually take stock of what you've achieved, because it helps push you forward. Because I think sometimes you can just always keep chasing something and you feel you never arrive. And it's been brilliant because I tell you, show you the difference from a guy sitting in the early hours of the morning every night after my day job writing. This week I was in a boardroom in Stella McCartney, the designer. I was in there doing a talk on money. Now Penguin Publishing, so the people who publish books, have got me in doing talks for companies as the money expert, because they do lots of different authors where they go around and will do talks at different firms and things like that. So it could be nutrition, or it could be any area. It could be meditation, for example. It's all about well-being and money. I'm wheeled in as the money guy. So it was one of those moments when you sit there and think, yeah, do you know what? It's so different to me sitting at my dining room table at 1 o'clock in the morning writing something, hoping someone might read it, to be sat there with promoting actually the 30-day money plan book, which I wrote a few years ago. That was part of it. It's quite amazing. So I had my little moment of sitting back and taking stock, which was great.
Good. Okay. Excellent stuff. Well, while you've been chatting, I looked it up, and it's copper. So 7 years is copper, and hopefully you'll be saving our listeners more than just a few coppers by the content of today's pod. What have we got coming up?
I can see what you did there, Andy. But you know what? After all that, me saying all that about 7 years, I was brought swiftly back down to earth because the sickness bug paid my household a visit during the week. So yeah, just reality check there, which is wonderful. This week I've got 3 pieces. Now, one of the things I also did this week is something that's long overdue, which is switch my energy bill. And again, I was talking at the talk I did this week. I was explaining to people that I am a realist. I don't go to preach to people. I don't tell people, oh, you should. Because one of the things is, a lot of the people out there who give some form of money advice or expertise are very patronising. They talk to people like they're children, and you should be doing this. Well, I know that's not the case. We're far too busy, and we've got better things to do with our lives. So I actually finally got round to switching my energy bill. It's been on my to-do list forever. And I want to talk about that because I saved myself £200 for the year. But what I want to do is, rather than go into the nuances of how I did it, I want to do the lazy way. I'm a big fan of lazy finance. Maybe that should be a book I should be talking to Penguin about. I love lazy finance, so it's going to be the lazy way to get this stuff sorted, because it can take you minutes. That's what it took me. So I want to run through that. I also want to talk about an interesting development for car insurance, so people who don't use their cars that much. I mean, I used to be one of these people. I'd go to work when I used to work in central London, and I'd catch the train in, and my car would sit outside my house all week and not be used. Now, if you're one of those people, then you'll like this piece, because it may be a way you could save yourself between £500 and £1,500 a year. So listen out for that piece. And now the other piece I want to talk to you about is to do with savings versus shares, and it was inspired by a piece that I was asked to comment on by journalists. So it's really the idea of, should people just be, because the press piece, just to give you a quick snippet, was that savers have lost out on millions of pounds by keeping their money in savings accounts, rather than, had they invested it, they would have made much more better returns over the last 10 years. And I was asked for my opinion on that, and should that be a sign that people should be bailing out of savings and investing in things like shares. So I'm going to talk through that. So first piece, let's do the energy stuff, Andy.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing the energy stuff, because I got a letter through my front door around about 3 or 4 days ago to tell me that prices are going up, and then they look at your usage and then give you an estimate on how much it's going to cost. And both my gas and electricity are going up, and it's going to cost me an extra £70 or £80 a year, they reckon, on my current rates. Now, I think I'm already paying over the odds. So I think I can make double savings here, Damien, and I need to get my act together before the prices go up on the 1st of April. So you need to help me as much as the listeners today.
Well, yeah, I've got some other bad news on that, because there was a story this week that came out that water bills are likely to rise 2% in April as well. So it's all bad news, unfortunately, Andy. But on the energy front, just the quick tip is always go for dual fuel. Generally speaking, having your gas and electricity with the same provider will save you money. And paying by direct debit and not having paper bills will also make it more affordable. So that's like a almost a given to take that on board. Now, what I did is, one of the things with switching energy is that it seems time consuming, and I've written an article on Money to the Masses, which is it's got a title. If you Google switching energy when you go onto the site, it's how to switch energy and save money and get cash back in 17 minutes and something. And it has got 17 minutes and I think 50 seconds in the title. And I actually timed myself to do it. Now, that is the long way, which actually isn't obviously as long as people think, to shop around and use lots of different comparison sites and get a good cashback deal, because you can get cashback when you switch energy providers as well. So you might want to do that. So it's a kind of optimizing things. But like I said, I'm loving the lazy way to do things. Now, the first thing to say is, if you don't know who Martin Lewis is, you probably live in a cave, because the guy's everywhere. But one of the ways to obviously save energy very quickly is, Martin Lewis a few years ago launched something called the Cheap Energy Club, which is essentially a price comparison site in a way. But it's got a very nice twist to it, which I like, because you can actually ask them to email you when you can make savings in the future on your energy bill. So if you decide to switch to a particular product using it, so it works like a comparison service, and you say, look, if I'm able to save £150 a year based on my usage, then they will email you, which I like, because that's quite a good notification. So you can go on there and you can just estimate your usage for energy. But I would say to anyone, get your annual statement for your energy provider, which you probably should have had because you tend to get it in December or January, which will tell you your exact usage over the year, which covers summer and winter when you have the peaks and troughs, and use that. And if you use that figure, you're going to get a really accurate readout of what your potential savings are. And using that comparison site, you can decide if you want to have green energy and various different factors. But I also like that they factored in the customer satisfaction ratings for the energy providers. So very quickly you can get down to looking at which is going to be the cheapest, but then jumping down and picking one that's got good customer satisfaction ratings, which is what I did. So have a look at the Energy Saving Club. It does only take minutes, and you can then click on the buttons and you can go through. And of course, Money Saving Expert will get a payment for you going through them. But that's how these comparison sites work, which is, I mean, I don't have an issue with at all. It comes from the energy provider and not your bank account. Some have cashback deals. I mean, if you want to really shop around for cashback, you can do using that. So have a go at the Energy Savings Club. That's an easy way to do things. Now, the other way, which is becoming increasingly prevalent, is something called collective switching. So you've got, let Martin Lewis do it for you, but you've got something else called collective switching, which is taking the advantage of the powers of economies of scale. So there are this was started a few years ago. I think it was by Which, with something called the Big Switch. So what they do is they go, right, sign up to our service. So put in your email address. So say I want to be part of this big switch of some kind, and then when they get hopefully millions of people all signed up with details about their energy bills, etc., they will go and negotiate with an energy providers and say, right, give us the best deal because you're using the weight of numbers. And then they come back to you and go, da-da, this is what we've negotiated for you. Aren't we wonderful? And then you go, yes, you're wonderful. And then you go, switch me to that deal. And again, they do get paid for that in the background, sort of somewhere between 30 and probably 50 quid. And a few years ago, one of them, I think it was Which, did that, but didn't quite make it clear they did get paid, and it was a bit of an upset about it, because obviously you switch a lot of people's bills, you'll get paid a lot of money, into the millions. But there are other people who are doing it now. I mean, This Is Money, the newspapers, if you look at most of the newspapers, they're starting to do these collective switching campaigns, which are tie-ups with normally a comparison site that go and do the negotiations. But what they are doing, they're doing things where they do regional deals that they negotiate, and they will also do an overall one, and they will do one for people who are on prepaid meters, not just people who have paid by regular direct debit. So that's a good way of getting a good deal, because you're not committed to switching. You just stick your hand up effectively by giving them your details and say, yeah, I might be interested, and you can let somebody go and negotiate on your behalf. So it's a wonderful lazy way to get a good deal, and just check, because if they don't get a deal you don't think is that great, you don't have to switch. They have to make sure it's good for you. You can always go back and use something like Martin Lewis again. And the other thing I would say is that when you do these comparisons, you might find that one of the best deals is still on the provider that you've got. So the most lazy way to do any of this is probably to ring your provider up and say, hey, am I on your cheapest deal for my energy usage, and make them look around for you, and then they will switch you onto that if you can't be bothered with form filling and think that switching energy provider is difficult. Because don't forget, when you switch energy provider, it is really simple, because when you just click I want to switch online, then they do it all for you, and you just keep getting emails telling you that it's going. There's no pipes changing. It's just literally a change of bill for most people. They just see almost the person who charges them differs. Occasionally you get hiccups with the technology, and you might get conflicting bills from two different providers, but it's rare. And I've done it numerous times. It's not a big deal. So it will take, normally you click a button, it will take about 2 to 3 weeks to complete, and then you're getting bills from a new provider, and they will set up the direct debits, etc., etc. So the three lazy ways are: use something like the Cheap Energy Club with Martin Lewis, but maybe before, join one of these collective switching campaigns. Just if you Google them, there's always one out there, and then see what they can negotiate for you. And then if you can't be bothered with that, just ask your existing provider to stick you on the cheapest deal that they do. The other quick thing I'll mention is that people always ask me when they do the comparison, well, how long should I fix my bill for? And is it 1 winter, 2 winters, or should I not bother at all? Now, that's a real, how sort of long's a piece of string type of thing. It's a personal choice, but I just will say at this point in time, I didn't fix my bill for a particularly lengthy period of time, and I did it for just over this winter and the next, and that is because I might take a view that energy bills might not shoot up, but then that can again be a personal view, and somebody might have a different one. We don't know because we import energy as well, so the whole Brexit and everything like that might push up our energy bill. So I like to fix for a short period of time, maybe a year at least, just to make sure that I cover myself from any spikes in prices. So I hopefully you found that useful, Andy, and you're going to be inspired to go and switch your energy bills.
I am indeed. First thing I'm going to do is hunt down that annual statement, and I'll be all over that. I might do all of what you suggest just to give myself the best chance, because I'm not desperate to switch straight away, so I'm going to join one of those lists. Excellent. Good stuff, Damien. Maybe next week or the week after I'll give you an update and let you know how it went, really.
Yeah, I mean, do that, Andy, because it will just show people. We could have done it while on air, but it would have been a bit boring because you can do it that quickly. I did it while watching I was watching the football the other week, and I did it with that in the background while Spurs were disappointing. Anyway, on to the next thing.
You do a lot of crazy things when Spurs are on the telly. I'm sure I spoke to you last time when you were washing the car. And now, see, you've just revealed that while Spurs are playing, you wash the car and change your energy bills. You really do live a life, don't you?
I'm crazy, Andy. I have to say, though, that people who would think, that's not very loyal. I do go to the home games, so these normally are the away ones that I don't get to go to. So, yeah, I do. I don't watch a lot of football in the house. It's hard to when you've got two children. They don't let you, do they, Andy? You know.
I absolutely know. Okay, what we got coming next?
I want to talk quickly about a new insurance product for car insurance, which I found intriguing, and it fits into the new modern lifestyle for people, especially who live in towns and cities. And it's a new product from a firm called Cover. Now, when I saw the name, I was thinking, what does that actually say? Because it's spelt CUVVA. And obviously it's the kind of slang way of saying cover. And now I say that from a man who was born in the place where the word chav came from. So I can say it with the correct, the correct pronunciation of cover. And because Chatham, if anyone's interested, Chatham is the place where the word chav originated. It described a particular spot in an area in Chatham. I don't know why I'm telling you this. And yeah, I was born not too far from there, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. But anyway, listen, I was going down memory lane then, thinking about where I grew up on a council estate and things like that.
There was a wistful look in your eye, and you sort of looked off into the distance.
Sorry to the listeners there, I completely forgot you were there. I was
more on Damien's upbringing next week.
Yeah. Right, the cover is what I was getting to. Now, normally what happens when you get car insurance, you pay a monthly or an annual premium. I prefer annual because it's cheaper. And your car, if you live in a town or city and you're commuting, it can just sit outside your house forever and all week and not get used. And really, that's expensive. But of course, you need to have insurance because if your car's on the road, you need to have an insurance in place, don't you? So what's happened? This firm Cover have come up with a new type of policy. What they used to do, they already existed, and they used to produce a policy whereby if you wanted to drive someone else's car, you could buy an hourly product for a few pounds.
I think I've even done that myself, yeah.
See, I hadn't heard of it, so you're a step ahead of me, Andy.
I bought Cover for a weekend once when my car had broken down. I borrowed my father-in-law's, and literally I just bought Cover for 2 days.
Yeah.
About 40 quid. It was quite expensive, really, for a couple of days, but it means that you are covered at least.
Yeah, and they do it on the hour. So they come up with a policy where you pay a monthly subscription, which is between £10 and £30, and then you can pay via an app an amount of about £1.20 for every hour you want to drive your car. So if your car sits there all month, then outside your house, or all week rather, then you pay that base subscription. But then when you want to drive it, you can pay by the hour. So they claim that it can save people around between £500 and £1,500 a year on car insurance, which I think is quite a steep claim, to be honest. But that's what they're saying based around annual premiums. It seems to me that it will suit people who probably do less than 4,000-ish miles a year, that do tend to live in towns where they've got that lifestyle. So it would have probably suited me in the past. You do get no claims bonuses on it, which I thought was interesting. And the thing to note is on a per person basis, not per car. So if you live in a house where, say, you and your wife or you and your husband drive the same car, you'd actually have to have 2 policies and then top up the hourly rate for each of you when you wanted to drive. So therefore it can actually ramp the cost up. But I just wanted to bring it to people's attention because I love innovative products. I've not tried it. I can't vouch for the product. But our lifestyles have changed over the years. And I think anything that reflects that change in lifestyle I like. And this is innovative. And I think that it shows where technology and and finance are solving problems. People have probably noticed that in the last 6 months I've been talking a lot about fintech and that angle because I've been to a few conferences, seeing a lot of the new stuff that's coming out. I mentioned about, I think, mortgages last week and financial technology and banking. And it is the new world. People do like technology and want to be able to do more things on their phones. Don't forget the phone. The best line I heard was at a conference was that the phone is the TV is the new radio and the phone is effectively the new TV. So when you're in your house, do you remember when you'd do things in your house with the radio on in the background, not paying much attention and doing other things? And TVs now become like that. So when a TV's on, people pick up their phone and start tapping away on their apps and things like that while the TV's on in the background. And so it's a change in dynamic, and this sort of feeds into that whole, we want to solve things on our phone and our lifestyle has changed. So it's a neat idea. Go and have a look at it.
Okay, so you were talking earlier about savings versus shares, and there's been some sort of talk and recent articles and bits and pieces about people over the last 10 years could have made a lot more money had they gone into shares rather than put their money into savings. So what have you got to say on it, Damien?
Well, there was a piece that came out, and although it was reflective of the last 10 years, it's something that we hear about regularly. And a pension provider sent out a press release where they did some analysis about the money that investors or consumers could have made had they invested in shares and various different assets rather than cash. So basically it was titled, "They've missed out. Savers have lost more than £100 billion in the last decade investing in cash ISAs rather than pouring money into investment funds." And the premise was that lots of the government strategy has been around increasing ISA limits, and they've gone up over the last few years, and while the amount you can put into pensions has reduced. So they're saying that people are being shoehorned into favouring ISAs over pensions, and in pensions people typically will invest their money, whereas in ISAs, most of the money in ISAs actually is still in cash. Now, I was asked what my view on that was, and the cash versus ISA debate. And you have to bear in mind that the company that did this is called Royal London, and they often do sort of press pieces. They're normally quite interesting, but they are a pension provider, and so they are skewed to wanting people to buy pension products and invest. And interestingly, Steve Webb, I don't know if anybody knows or recognises the name Steve Webb, but he used to be the pensions minister, and he was around the periods of auto-enrolment and when the pension freedoms came in. But he now works for Royal London, and he does their sort of outspoken bits about pensions. So he was part of this press release. So this just shows you why it's slightly skewed. You always need to question why any press release or any story that comes out, who's driving it and what their motive is. And in this case, it really is to do with the fact they want more people to take out pensions, because if they just buy cash ISAs, they're not going to make any money. That's the cynic in me. And but when you look at it, there's no disputing if you go over the long term, if you invest in various different assets, you will make more money than if you invested in cash. And if we go back, there's the Barclays Equity Gilt Study. People may have heard me mention it before, but it's the most sort of exhaustive study out there when it looks at different assets. And you're looking at about 5% per annum on average from shares versus 0.8% on cash. So that's looking back at data going over 100 years. That does hide or mask the real big downtrends and the obviously the big massive uptrends. So you get years where you could be down 20% in shares, but equally you could be years where you go up 20%. So the reality is most people don't invest for 100 years. So what they do is they invest probably for a period of time of 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 years more. And so what they experience depends on when they invest, when they go in and when they leave. Now, if you're the kind of person who will invest money, say, at the market high, and then as soon as it drops, gets spooked and sells, you're never going to experience 5% a year. So that's a slightly skewed or false expectation by saying to people you could get 5%, because it depends on people's behaviour. So if you're that kind of person, cash is always going to be better for you because you're very risk averse. You're not going to make much money, but this world we live in is going to normalise. And by that I mean that in the last decade, when we had the financial crisis, what happened, central banks reacted by cutting interest rates to boost the economy, because they did that because if credit was cheaper, then that would hopefully stimulate people to spend money. The worst thing for an economy is people suddenly shut up shop and don't want to spend, and they wanted to keep the wheels of business moving. The other thing the banks did was they started printing money, and we always laugh, Andy, when we talk about my gardening analogy about quantitative easing, water in the garden, where the money, if you water a dry garden, the money runs off into, forms puddles. That's what happens if you print money, and that puddle forms in what you could call riskier assets like shares and things like that. Because let's be honest, if you take it from a really big picture, if there's money being sprayed around, you're basically not really caring where it goes. You're going to be a bit more risk hungry, so you're going to want to take more risk. Because if you're being penalised for saving money because the rates have been cut, you're going to start moving into seeking better returns, which means you have to start getting riskier assets, and that's what the Bank of England wanted you to do. So looking at the last 10 years and saying, look, that's evidence that you should be in shares, is actually misleading. The long-term view of that Barclays study is a bit more representative. So my answer to this was, yes, investing in a range of assets is much better than investing in cash on the long term. If you want to invest for the long term and don't mind losing money, well, on paper losing money, so the ups and downs, you're not going to knee-jerk and take your money out. But if you really don't like risk and you really don't care about the impact of inflation, then cash is always going to be better, and you can get better rates than just those that you see on the high street. There's Best Buy tables out there which you can find on our website, and also there is something called, if it's Savings Champion, or a company, savingschampion.co.uk, they run a service which is a concierge service. I keep telling them that name is it's sort of got connotations of being elitist and having all these things bundled in that
yeah, I agree, absolutely,
that you don't want. You know, like you get concierge on a credit card, but actually what they should have changed the term to something that's just basically they get your money and they give you, go and find the best rates for you and do all that searching and moving your accounts and paperwork and making sure you're covered under all the financial services compensation schemes for you. So they do that donkey work. They take a small fee, but despite that they will actually increase your interest by hundreds of pounds a year. I mean, it's typically for people who've got about 100 grand, really, 50 to 100 grand at least. That's where it becomes into its own. If you've got less than that, then the Best Buy tables work. So the answer to this is, don't be rushing out, cashing in your stocks and shares ISAs and saying that we want to move it into a investment ISA. I mean, you don't have to cash them in, you can just move it across. Don't cash it in, actually, because that would get rid of your tax incentive. If you take your money out and then invest it again, that will use this year's allowance. You can just transfer it. Do it in stages if you want to start in getting into investing. It's not an all or nothing world, despite it's one of the things that frustrates me about a lot of what we get in the press and a lot of stuff you see online and commentary, is it's always all or nothing. So it's like cash versus shares investing. You can have both. Cash is a good place to be in certain times. It's always about active investing versus passive investing. You can have both. It's not this binary choice, because the reason why people present it as that is because most people only offer one or the other. So a company is either offering cash or it's offering you the ability to buy shares, and therefore they make their money. So they only promote what is good for them. So look around, read Money to the Masses, obviously, because we give you a balanced view. And if you do want to get into investing, then do have a look at our 80/20 investor service, because it caters for people who want to get into investing who are new to investing.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, anything else?
That's it, Andy. Keep sending in all your questions, and the Ask Damien videos are back out on the interweb, so Facebook, YouTube, they're 90-second videos, really, well, 90 seconds to 3 minutes of me answering money questions with a awesome hip-hop backbeat. So have a look. They are fun. I love doing them.
They are. They're black and white. And I think if you've ever seen these sort of, I don't know what you call them these days, memes online of these thug life type videos, then it's kind of that, but for finance. It's brilliant.
But with money. And it's deliberately like that to engage with people. So if you see them, go on our Facebook page, find them, share them, because they are really good. And I tell you what, also check us out on Instagram, because Instagram, the different channels we use. Twitter, I do a lot of just talking about, like, sharing stories and commenting on things just ad hoc. With Instagram, I do a lot of sharing thoughts as well about what we're doing in terms of the path of money to the masses and how to do what we do, how the journey evolved as well. And we also do a daily roundup of the 3 key finance stories that are affecting your finances. We do it in a pictorial format, and with a bit of commentary beneath, so you don't even have to read the news. So we're doing different things. And Facebook, we're going to do a lot more. The videos appear on there alongside YouTube of me chatting, and we're going to try and do a lot more engagement and eventually Facebook live stuff. So keep an eye out for all of that. So do engage with us on all the platforms and share, because that's what keeps us, that's what helps us grow, that's what helps Money to the Masses stay in existence and stay being free to use. So I've been 7 years to get to this point. I want to be, in 7 years, Andy, talking about, well, I don't know what, but it's blown up into epic proportions.
Brilliant stuff. I love the idea of all that sort of engagement via the various different platforms. Facebook Live sounds good as well. Should we put a commitment in there that one day soon, sometime this year, maybe later this year, we'll do a Facebook Live podcast? So you get to see all the bits that we edit out.
Yeah. So a lot of it will be me and Andy laughing, or Andy looking at his phone going, "Sorry, mate, I didn't hear what you said there," because he's just checked the cricket score. It does happen. Andy is ever the professional, but occasionally it does happen.
Do you know what? Because we do this in 2 different locations, you don't get to see what's on that phone. It's often me fact-checking and add little bits and pieces of gold, like the start of this podcast when we talked about the 7-year anniversary, and I chipped in with the fact that it was copper. That was because I was on my phone Googling, not checking the cricket score.
You sound like that naughty child who's been caught in class on his phone and he's telling his teacher that he's doing something else. Actually, fairness, you were. Anyway, that's it for this week. Like I say, do get in touch. Money to the Masses, so that's the number 2 in the middle, and you can email me as ever at podcast@moneytothemasses.com or Damien@moneytothemasses.com.
Thanks, Damien. I'm off to check the cricket score. See you later.
Don't forget to claim your free copy of Damien's best-selling book, The 30-Day Money Plan. Sort your finances in just 5 minutes a day, worth $4.99. Just go to moneytothemasses.com/podcast to find out how.